In the last 8 or 9 years, a lot of my contribution to the AES has been in trying to put some common sense into this whole subject of grounding, which is one of the great mysteries of the audio world and has been for an awfully long time. Grounding is something that goes back at least 150 years to the time when the only thing that it was known that electricity was useful for was running rotating machinery in factories. The folks at the time had discovered that between the generating plant, usually on a river, and the factory would be miles of utility lines, which could be nothing more than wires strung on trees back then. And that brought up the very real possibility of having lightning get inside a building by conduction along these newfangled power lines. So the concept of grounding, which had been thoroughly developed by the turn of the 1800s, basically, largely on the work of Ben Franklin and some other folks. They had discovered that if you want to keep lightning at least slightly under control, you had to figure out a way to divert it to ground, to earth ground, along a path that did not involve the insides of a dwelling or whatever. And so when the electric utilities first became a force, they had discovered that every so many utility poles you would have to ground one conductor to provide a path for lightning. That is where grounding, or the concept of grounding, got started, and that is as valid today as it was back then. The problem is that 100 years ago, when you said ground and you had George Westinghouse and Marconi and Alexander Graham Bell in the same room, they all knew exactly what you were talking about, which was it was a connection to the earth to enhance the safety of people in the presence of electrical equipment and machinery. Well, anymore, and I'm sorry to say it, but even today, if you have 10 engineers in the room and you use the term ground, every one of them is going to have a completely different idea of what you're talking about. And it's a matter of semantics in the Tower of Babel. We've used the same term to describe a virtually infinite number of loosely related concepts in electronics, and if you understand the big picture, that's wonderful, but the big picture had gotten so polluted that an awful lot of people didn't have a clue what it was, and we decided to try and right that if possible. So the culmination of all that was the June '95 issue of the Journal, which consisted of 7 papers, which covered every aspect of what, why, when, where, how, and etc., along with tons of references. And my understanding is that's now the most popular publication that the AES has ever printed. And I don't know what printing it's into, but it's more than 2 anyway.